Okay, so today we've got a pretty interesting Star Wars movie update, which is coming at a very strange time for the franchise. Everyone is talking about The Mandalorian and Grogu. We've already started anticipating Star Wars Starfighter, which is a year from now. But there's one Star Wars movie that was announced over 3 years ago that exists in a weird kind of limbo. It still doesn't have a production date, it's not been officially cancelled, and we don't know if Dave Filoni still wants to work on it. That is the Rey movie. And anytime we have the slightest bit of news for it, everyone rolls their eyes. Very few fans genuinely believe this thing is ever going to be made. But today, my friends, we have some Rey movie news which is a little bit different. Instead of the usual Daisy Ridley does an interview and promises the movie is still coming, it's a former writer on the project speaking out. Now, it's no secret that this movie has gone through so many different creatives. It started with Damon Lindelof, who's the person we're talking about in this video, then it was Stephen Knight, and the latest update is the writer is going to be George Nolfi. But the first writer Kathleen Kennedy assigned to the Charmin Obeid-Chenoy film was, as I said, Damon Lindelof. And in a brand new interview with The Ringerverse, he spills the beans on his confusion and frustration with being fired from Lucasfilm, and he gives us a few plot details, what his version of the Rey movie would have looked like. But I just want to start by saying this. Damon Lindelof isn't everyone's cup of tea. His style of filmmaking is revered by some, despised by others, and he's often been dubbed as the king of unresolved mysteries. But regardless of what you think of his past work, I have to admit, his premise for the Rey movie sounds very interesting, much stronger than I expected, and I'm actually quite baffled that Lucasfilm said no. Although, not too surprised, they do have a track record of rejecting pretty solid ideas. But speaking to the Ringerverse, Damon Lindelof says this: Lucasfilm came to me and said, "What do you think a Star Wars movie should be?" And I said, "It should be this and that." And then they said, "Great, you're hired." And then 2 years later, I was fired. And so I guess I was wrong. And then he goes on to reveal that the central premise of his Star Wars movie was the Protestant Reformation post-Episode 9. In essence, Rey trying to figure out how to organize a new Jedi Order. In his own words, he says, "There's a force of nostalgia, and there's a force of revision, because both sides are at odds." And Lindelof says he wanted this to reflect sentiments within the Star Wars fandom. He didn't want that to come across as too obvious, but he did want to reflect the debates between the old Star Wars and the new. And to be honest, I think Lindelof's approach is quite creative. Instead of us, as writers, deciding which path Rey is going to take, let's show those debates, those conversations, those struggles, and this tumultuous period on screen. Allow the audience to see that clash of ideologies. And so in Lindelof's iteration, Rey's already studied the sacred Jedi texts, as we saw in The Rise of Skywalker, as we see in the comics, and in founding a new academy, she's trying to combine and reconcile elements of the Jedi Order of old, while also learning from their mistakes, and moving towards a new future for the Jedi. But then Lindelof goes on to say that the main issue with this film is that there was no clear vision for its purpose. And when that happened, it slowed things down considerably, and it was very difficult to get the tone right. He says there were so many big questions they couldn't answer yet. Where is this inside of canon? What's its relationship with Episode 9? Are we starting a new trilogy? All of those things, he says, they're massive and they're too big. Lindelof further believes that these issues are symptomatic of a bigger problem with Star Wars at the moment. Notably, after Episode 9, Lucasfilm didn't really know which direction to go in. The sequel trilogy was what Disney expected to be the center of Star Wars. He says, quote, "When The Force Awakens came out, we all knew what it was. It was Rey, it was Finn, it was Poe, and then we started migrating back to Luke, Leia, Han, and Chewie. But we got a sense that when this trilogy was over, we were going to be launching with these new characters, that they were done with the old, and they were just moving forward with Rey and her friends." But now Lindelof believes that the plans have changed, and the new focus is The Mandalorian and Grogu. I suppose we won't know till later this week when fans vote with their wallet, because if The Mandalorian and Grogu doesn't perform as Lucasfilm expected, that could be a wrap on those characters. But the question of, is the future Mando and Grogu? Is it Ahsoka? Is it Ryan Gosling? Are they going back to Finn, Rey and Poe? Those decisions are down to Dave Filoni, and Lucasfilm might not have made that decision yet. Now look, I don't despise Rey or have this vitriolic hate for the character like a lot of people do, but I was never super stoked for this film. That being said, I have to admit, Damon Lindelof's original premise does sound pretty good. In a way, I suppose it rhymes with a movie that was announced on the very same day as this film, James Mangold's Dawn of the Jedi. Whether it's the distant past or post Episode 9, both movies were going to deal with a clash of ideologies in terms of reforming and founding a new Jedi Order. Now, because Lindelof can only speak for his own scripts, we have no idea what Stephen Knight contributed, and we don't know what George Nolfi's going to do with it. There were rumours earlier this month that Lucasfilm is still keen on making the Rey movie. Despite having stepped down as Lucasfilm president, Kathleen Kennedy is still going to be involved, but we don't know what the new story is, or if it's remained the same, just with new creatives, no Lindelof, and maybe a different tone. But I have to wonder if fans really give a toss about this film. There's a big fan movement behind the hunt for Ben Solo, there are fans who want to see more Finn, but when it comes to Rey, the answer seems to be no. Now here's what's interesting. Damon Lindelof says that after Episode 9, the sense he got within Lucasfilm is that Rey was going to be the future of this brand. But I think the success of The Mandalorian's first 2 seasons changed all of that. That's when Lucasfilm began to pivot. But now that they're starting to shift focus back to the big screen, I wonder what Lucasfilm's going to prioritize going forward. If The Mandalorian and Grogu flops, after Starfighter next year, they might go back to Rey. Lindelof himself says he has no idea what's coming next. But on the subject of the Star Wars movie coming later this week, we do have some new projections for the opening box office. According to Deadline.com, projections are higher than a week ago, and it's now expected to make $160 million in its opening weekend. The movie cost $165 million to make, but do keep in mind, and I will say this is to Lucasfilm's credit, the marketing has ramped up to insane levels. They collaborated with National Geographic, Jamie Oliver, they've been on all of the global morning talk shows, and these marketing costs do need to be taken into account. So it's got a bit of a bigger hurdle to pull in a profit or even break even, and I've seen the numbers range from $300 million to $400 million. But today the trades are saying that the box office is not as doom and gloom as they originally expected. I did see a couple of folks say that the movie needs about $600 million to make anything of a profit, and they think it's going to finish anywhere between 400 and 500 mil when all is said and done. Honestly, we have no idea at this stage, but it is going to be fascinating to track, and we're just a couple of days away. Some countries get it tomorrow. The reviews have been rather tepid. Even those who usually love everything Disney Star Wars puts out have been warning fans, this film is exactly what you expect, for better or for worse. It's exactly what it's been marketed as in all of the trailers. Don't expect anything more than that. It's just going to be a fun, surface-level Star Wars movie. I'm looking forward to see it for myself. Always form your own opinions, but despite this being a low-stake movie with no real substance, it's still very important for the future of Star Wars, and I reckon Lucasfilm is going to make some crucial decisions based on its performance. The future of the Mandalorian TV show, a lot is riding on this. So some very important Star Wars movie updates in this one, guys. What do you make of the original pitch by Damon Lindelof? And how are you feeling just a couple of days away from The Mandalorian and Grogu?